Imagine a world where one of the most powerful ancient civilizations, one that rivaled Egypt and Babylon, was almost completely erased from history for over 3,000 years. Buried beneath centuries of dust, forgotten by time, their legacy hidden in stone tablets, shattered cities, and mysterious hieroglyphs. This is the story of the Hittites, a people who ruled vast lands with iron swords, outwitted their enemies with diplomacy and espionage, and who helped shape the laws, warfare, and statecraft that ripple through our world to this very day. And yet, until the 20th century, we barely knew they existed. In this video, we'll uncover who the Hittites really were, how their empire rose and fell, and why forgetting them might have been one of the greatest historical blind spots of all time. Let's rewind to around 1600 BCE, to the rugged, mountainous region of central Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. Here, amid high plateaus and fertile valleys, a people calling themselves the Nesili, but known to us as the Hittites, established a kingdom that would become one of the great superpowers of the ancient Near East. Their capital, Hattusa, was a marvel of engineering, a walled fortress with paved roads, vast temples, and archives filled with tens of thousands of clay tablets written in cuneiform. The Hittites were not a single ethnic group, but a fusion of Indo-European settlers and indigenous Anatolian peoples, united under a sophisticated and surprisingly modern administrative system. From the beginning, the Hittites were different. Unlike their Egyptian or Mesopotamian contemporaries, the Hittites were not obsessed with divine kingship. Their ruler, the Tabana, or Great King, was powerful, yes, but also accountable to a council of nobles known as the Panku. This early form of proto-constitutional monarchy foreshadowed later political systems where checks on authority were crucial. The Hittite king was a military commander, a high priest, and a judge, but he was not above the law. In fact, one of the Hittites' greatest legacies was their legal code, pragmatic, humane, and focused less on vengeance and more on restitution. They were among the first to codify protections for women, slaves, and even animals. This isn't to say the Hittites were gentle. They weren't. But their laws reflected a level of bureaucratic rationality far ahead of their time. Militarily, the Hittites were a force to be reckoned with. They mastered the use of chariots in war, not just as vehicles of brute force, but as platforms for coordination and control. Their chariots were lighter and more maneuverable than those of their rivals, which gave them a crucial edge in the field. Hittite armies were disciplined and well organized, and their empire expanded aggressively, sometimes through conquest, sometimes through diplomacy. They fought and negotiated with the great powers of their day: Egypt, Assyria, Mitanni, and Babylon. Perhaps their most famous engagement was the Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BCE, fought against the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses II. This titanic clash, immortalized in Egyptian temples and Hittite archives, ended in what many believe was the first recorded peace treaty in history. It marked a turning point where diplomacy began to rival raw violence in international affairs. But the Hittites were more than warriors. They were engineers, scholars, and innovators. They pioneered early forms of iron smelting, though not quite the Iron Age as we know it, and exported this precious metal across the region, giving them both economic leverage and military might. They also borrowed and refined the religions, languages, and myths of surrounding cultures, creating a syncretic pantheon that included hundreds of gods. Their religious flexibility and cultural adaptability were keys to managing a sprawling multi-ethnic empire. And yet, for all their achievements, the Hittite Empire fell, suddenly and catastrophically, around 1200 BCE. The reasons are still debated. Was it internal strife, a succession crisis, environmental collapse, invasion by the enigmatic sea peoples? Most likely it was a combination of these factors. The fall of the Hittites coincided with the broader Late Bronze Age collapse, a systemic breakdown that swept through the eastern Mediterranean, toppling cities, disrupting trade, and plunging entire civilizations into chaos. Within a generation, Hattusa was abandoned, the great Hittite archives buried, The memory of the empire all but erased from collective memory. For centuries, the Hittites vanished from history. Unlike the Egyptians, whose hieroglyphs covered temple walls, or the Babylonians with their enduring ziggurats, the Hittites left behind ruins no one could read. Their language, Hittite, was lost. Their identity misunderstood. Even the Bible, which mentions Hittites dozens of times, seemed to confuse them with later Neo-Hittite city-states that were Hittite in culture but politically fragmented. Only in the 20th century did archaeologists rediscover the Hittites' true legacy. Excavations at Hattusa, coupled with the deciphering of their cuneiform script, revealed a complex, literate, and surprisingly modern civilization, one that rivaled any of its better-known contemporaries. So, what does this mean for us today? What are the consequences of forgetting a civilization like the Hittites? The first is historical amnesia. When a major civilization disappears from our memory, we misattribute developments in law, warfare, diplomacy, and governance to others. The rediscovery of the Hittites rewrote the ancient history of the Near East. It forced scholars to reconsider the roots of statecraft, international relations, and empire. For example, the Hittite-Egyptian peace treaty from Kadesh is now regarded as a foundational moment in diplomacy, one echoed in the founding principles of the United Nations. Ignoring the Hittites meant missing a key thread in the fabric of political history. The second is cultural flattening. We often treat the ancient world as a binary of Egypt and Mesopotamia, two poles of power and civilization. The Hittites show us that history is far more complex. Their empire acted as a bridge between East and West, between Indo-European and Semitic cultures, between Anatolia and the Levant. Understanding the Hittites helps us trace the diffusion of language, religion, metallurgy, and legal thought across vast regions. Their laws may have influenced Hebrew legal codes. Their mythology filtered into Greek and Roman stories. Their language, the oldest known Indo-European tongue, provides critical clues for linguists tracing the roots of Western languages. The third consequence is geopolitical blindness. The Hittites ruled the very land that would become a geopolitical hotspot for millennia, Anatolia. Today, this region is still a point of conflict and cultural friction, a crossroads of civilizations. Understanding the Hittites gives us context for the strategic importance of Turkey, the enduring complexity of the Levant, and the ancient roots of power struggles in the region. It also reminds us how empires rise not only through might, but through systems, laws, roads, alliances that can endure even when names and rulers vanish. But perhaps the darkest aspect of the Hittites' disappearance is the cautionary tale it tells. Here was a civilization that believed in order, justice, balance, and it still fell. It fell so hard that its very memory was obliterated. We often believe that complexity in law can save us from collapse. The Hittites show that collapse doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like silence, like an empire that vanished so thoroughly we forgot it ever existed. In today's world, where records are digital, histories are curated by algorithms, and truth is fragile, the Hittites offer a haunting reminder. If we stop telling our story, no matter how advanced, powerful, or righteous we think we are, we can be erased. Not by fire or sword, but by forgetting. Even now, we know less than we should about the Hittites. Many of their tablets remain untranslated. Their religious practices, their internal politics, even the exact cause of their demise remain shrouded in mystery. We are still piecing them together from the fragments of clay and stone. What else have we lost? What other civilizations have slipped through the cracks of history because we failed to listen hard enough to the silence they left behind? So, next time we speak of ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Greece, we should also speak of the Hittites. Not as a footnote, but as a foundation. Not as a mystery, but as a message. Their fall may have been forgotten, but their legacy endures if we choose to remember it.